Africa, it's a country. Nah, I haven't gone crazy. Not yet. Well, Africa is a sizable territory which is either a paradise of lions, giraffes, elephants, colorful tribes, or a war zone, home of Ebola, where children are starving and people live in huts waiting for somebody to come and save them. This video is about understanding how it became normal to think of Africa as this kind of diffuse country. What does this cause and will it ever change? But first, let's get a bit of context. Hi everyone, this is Luis and welcome to another Intercool video. If you're new here, please consider subscribing by clicking the button that is somewhere around here, and also click the notification bell so you're notified every time I release a new video just like this one. You don't want to miss it. Of course, Africa is not a country, but you can be sure there's a lot of people, Africans and not Africans, who find it very ignorant, extremely annoying and even disrespectful to treat a continent of such a size and value just like if it was a minuscule, homogeneous and worthless land. It is how it's portrayed in the media, but also how people use it in everyday conversations. Let me give you a few examples. Where is football almost a religion? You may think Argentina, most likely Brazil, but not America. Where do children drink wine? In France, well, among families who choose to do so, but not like in Europe. Where do you find kangaroos? It is not in Oceania. It's Australia. Where do people run away from bulls in local festivities? It is not in Europe. It's in Spain. Now, where did the 2014-2016 Ebola crisis take place? Africa. Where do you find ancient hunter-gathering tribes? Africa. Where do you find giraffes? Africa. Okay, whatever you do, just don't waste your food. There are children starving in Africa. So why do people think of Africa as a country instead of a continent with a wide range of exciting countries, regions, people, idiosyncrasies and nuances? To be fair, not everyone actually simplifies and generalizes about Africa. Some sources at least make an effort to divide it into two parts. The northern one, where you find the brown people, North Africa, and the southern part where you find the even darker people, Sub-Saharan Africa. This part, even today, can still be found described simply as Black Africa. But to the foreign eyes, it doesn't really matter. One of the reasons this happens is because Africa was actually partitioned as a result of the Berlin Conference of 1884, but mostly all the previous and subsequent agreements between the European powers. Just like today, it didn't really matter what part of Africa was what. They would split it, exchange, give away parts of it, regardless of the people living in those territories. This is commonly known as the Scrabble for Africa. All colonization was bad and had terrible effects on the people and territories affected. But in the case of Africa, real settlement colonization like the one that happened in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, USA or South America didn't really take place, and the colonies were just used for extractive purposes. When decolonization happened, the European powers didn't really leave anything behind. Another reason is a lot of countries you know about it is because you had to study them at school. You probably had to study a list of countries and their capitals: the French Revolution, the First World War, the Industrial Revolution starting in the UK, the Roman Empire, the classical philosophy of Greece, and perhaps you have even traveled to some of those countries, but you wouldn't travel to Africa, would you? No. It's too dangerous. And at school, you didn't learn much about Africa. So how are you supposed to know? Oh, you're just going to sit down one day and say, today I'm going to learn about Africa. But all that works much smoother with a third component, the media. Media outlets and those with the power to write history and tell the story have very little interest in telling all the perspectives of it. The laziness of the media and their belief that people are not smart enough or interested in the specificities of the African continent make them prefer simple and catchy headlines where, as long as you say the word Africa, it's enough to cover any issue from Casablanca to Cape Town, from Lagos to Mogadishu. As a consequence, most people can't name more than few African countries. More interestingly, even those who can, and there are actually some, when talking about a continent, they would still think of it as a country. If you were asked by someone, do you speak European? You would be baffled. And if you don't instinctively answer with another question, you'll probably reply with such sarcasm and condescension that the listener will not have any doubt that he has made a fool of himself. Trust me, that's how dumb some people sound when they ask, "Do you speak African?" or "How is it to live next to the lions?" You might think I'm exaggerating, but nah. This phenomenon does not only affect Africa. To some degree, there was a similar situation with Asia, or the outdated term, the Orient, at least in the sense that for most people, Asia was just an homogeneous bulk of Chinese population. But it is great that today more and more people are able to mention at least a couple of differences between Japan, Thailand, China, or South Korea. South Korea is in fact the subject of the first video I made for this channel, and you can check it after this one. In the video, I looked into how South Korea has managed to become a cultural superpower, and that position is giving it the chance to tell their own stories in their own way. Look, a place is not only the physical demarcation on a map or the plot of land on the Earth's surface. It is imaginary constructs projected in our minds about information, experiences, and our own knowledge and references about that place. Now, what happens in America is the opposite in a way. Let me explain. There, a single country, the United States of America, monopolizes the denomination of a continent. This, of course, goes beyond the actual naming, which is quite obvious, but most importantly, it is its position in our collective imagination. Just think about how pretentious you have to be in order not to hesitate naming your country after the whole continent where it is located. In fact, if you say a Mexican is an American, some people may feel like it hammers their ears. Some believe it to be presumptuous and arrogant for citizens of the United States to monopolize the label American and prefer to call them US Americans instead. Sorry, I have to interrupt briefly. I just want you to take a look at these beautiful pictures for a second. Enough. Back to the topic. The reasons that explain how the US is a continent in our minds and those that explain how 54 countries became one country are actually very similar. The question is, will this ever change for Africa? For now, our today's subject only fits into this very convenient Western narrative of Africa as a barren continent plagued by problems. Even people who know that Africa isn't a country, and that's not everyone, can't get past the images of poverty in villages, violence-plagued townships, AIDS, malaria, and misery. This Time article, for example, that talks about a continent-wide binge drinking epidemic brings back familiar imagery, namely corrupt politicians and poor people rummaging through trash next to pigs. Africa does not have a drinking problem. An area of a region in a specific country might have a drinking problem. In the Boston Review in 2012, Ina Moore, a journalist previously based in the Democratic Republic of Congo, described this image perpetuation as a single story of Africa, a single story of catastrophe. In this single story, there was no possibility of Africans being similar to her in any way, no possibility of feelings more complex than pity, no possibility of connection as human equals. Politicians, celebrities, authors, the media, they all deserve their fair share of blame. But to make them the sole responsible is inaccurate and unproductive. It's about all of us, writers and readers, producers and viewers. We continue a storytelling tradition that hasn't fundamentally changed for centuries. So we can see there are two extreme images. One is Eden with pyramids, waterfalls, savanna, giraffes, elephants, lions, colorful tribes, and hell, which you already know. Some of us hold just one of those extreme images in our minds, while most of us hold both. However, just few of us spend much time thinking about the immense zone of possibilities and nuances that lies in between those extreme images. And this is not only bad for Africa, but also bad for those not from the continent. If you are a tourist and you know the Caribbean is stunning, you haven't thought about the many African hidden gems ready for us to discover. And no, not those blood diamond gems you always hear about, but rather the cultural gems that we never hear about. If you are a government or an institution and thought you need to strengthen relationship with South America, you have no idea how much you should be trying to work on solid bonds, bilateral relationship with Africa right now. If you were a scientist or an archaeologist and you thought of cultural heritage in the Middle East, you should think about how many are still hidden in the African continent. If you are a business and you thought there are opportunities in Asia, you have no idea the opportunities that Africa holds. For any regular person, you probably are very smart, but those news you are absorbing are probably not providing you anything of value. So what can you do? Well, just spend 10-15 minutes looking at a map of Africa. Check how strange it all looks to you. Realize how little you know about what you're seeing. You can use Google Maps, zoom in, zoom out, and zoom in again. That's it. After 15 minutes, some curiosity might have sparked in you. If it didn't, well, try again next time. If it doesn't either, all I can say is just be curious. Okay, just to recap. A place is not only about the geographic features, it's about the stories and the pictures constructed in our collective imagination. For most people, Africa is either Eden or hell. But this black and white perspective is not only bad for Africa, it's also bad for those who do not know Africa and would like to, or perhaps should know a bit more about that vast continent. Sadly, things will not change substantially until Africans get the means and the power to tell their own stories. But you should be curious and get interested and learn a bit more about the continent. It is quite easy to blame the news alone for this portrayal of Africa. I mean, media, politicians, they can definitely help. But in the end, it's mostly up to all of us to make an effort and broaden our perspectives. As there are many sides to America, Europe, and other places, so there are many sides to Africa. And as you don't like foreigners have a simplistic view of your place, so other people feel the same when you have a simplistic view of the place that is their home. Thank you very much for watching. If you have come this far in the video, I thank you very much. You are a true supporter. All I would like to ask you is subscribe to this channel. It will really help it. Share the video. Leave a comment about today's topic or any other topic. Make a suggestion if you want for a future video. As this community is still relatively small, I might actually make a video out of your suggestion. Thank you very much again, and as I always say, stay cool.